Today is January 23rd. It's the 23rd day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Born on this day in 1918, biochemist, pharmacologist, and Nobel Prize laureate, Gertrude Elion. Gertrude Bell Elion is born in New York City. She has an insatiable thirst for knowledge from an early age. She thrives in school and enjoys just about every course she takes. When she graduates high school, she's unsure of what to study in college. In her autobiography, she recalls her decision, writing, quote, "One of the deciding factors may have been that my grandfather, whom I loved dearly, died of cancer when I was 15. I was highly motivated to do something that might eventually lead to a cure for this terrible disease. When I entered Hunter College in 1933, I decided to major in science, and in particular, chemistry." Elion graduates with highest honors in chemistry in 1937. She applies for a number of fellowships, but laboratory positions during the Great Depression are scarce, and those that are available are not available to women. So she takes a teaching job, and then works as a lab assistant to a chemist. In 1939, she begins work on a master's degree, which she obtains 2 years later, just as the war is ramping up. Suddenly, there's great demand for chemists, and Elion finds a lab position doing quality control of produce, berries and pickles and such. She enjoys the work for a while. She learns a lot about instrumentation, but before long, she's bored. Gertrude Elion really wants to be in a research laboratory. She eventually finds work at a pharmaceutical company called Burroughs Wellcome. It's the pharmaceutical giant now called GlaxoSmithKline. In the 1940s, Elion takes a position at Burroughs Wellcome as an assistant to Dr. George Hitchings. Hitchings is working on a new method for developing drugs, and Elion is eager to roll up her sleeves and get in up to her elbows in the experiments. To her, each series of studies is like a mystery story, and she's given every opportunity to learn new and exciting things. She writes, quote, "I soon became very much involved in microbiology and in the biological activities of the compounds I was synthesizing. I was able to broaden my horizons into biochemistry, pharmacology, immunology, and eventually virology." During her years working with Dr. Hitchings, Gertrude Elion begins work on a doctorate degree. She attends night school in Brooklyn, commuting long distances from the Wellcome Research Labs in Tuckahoe, New York, for several years. But then she comes up against a roadblock. Elion writes, quote, "I was informed that I would no longer be able to continue my doctorate on a part-time basis, but would need to give up my job and go to school full-time. I made what was then a critical decision in my life, to stay with my job and give up the pursuit of a doctorate. Years later, when I received 3 honorary doctorate degrees from George Washington University, Brown University, and the University of Michigan, I decided that perhaps that decision had been the right one after all." Indeed, it is. By 1967, Elion is made the head of the Department of Experimental Therapy at Burroughs Wellcome, a position she holds until her retirement in 1983. In her time working there, Gertrude Elion and her colleague George Hitchings develop a wide range of drugs, including a chemotherapy for childhood leukemia, immune suppressants to overcome the rejection of donated organs in transplant surgery, treatments for malaria, herpes, and gout, and trimethoprim used to combat meningitis, septicemia, and bacterial infections. Following her retirement in 1983, Elion continues on at Wellcome as a scientist emeritus and consultant, and lends her expertise to the development of AZT as a treatment for AIDS. In 1988, Gertrude Elion and her colleague of 40 years, Dr. George Hitchings, are 2 of the 3 recipients of that year's Nobel Prize in Medicine. At that time, in 1988, Elion is among only a handful of women to have ever been awarded a Nobel Prize in science. But what's even more rare is that she receives such acclaim without having earned a doctorate. Gertrude Elion passes away in 1999 at the age of 81. For pretty much every day up until then, she spends her life in constant pursuit of knowledge, circumventing the obstacles of gender bias and academic prejudice, and she makes contributions to science that are described by the Nobel Committee as having a more fundamental significance than the discovery of individual drugs. In 1991, Nobel laureate Gertrude Elion, born on this day in 1918, is awarded the National Medal of Science by President George H.W. Bush, who remarks, quote, "From the work of a single individual come benefits that can banish suffering and prolong life for many millions of people. Her work," he says, "has transformed the world." There are 342 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. Passing away on this day in 2011 at the age of 96, the original fitness guru, Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne is a national celebrity preaching regular exercise and proper diet long before the likes of Richard Simmons, Jane Fonda, and Jillian Michaels. He is the founder of the modern physical fitness movement. So if you're still listening, it's amazing how much you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. Talk to you tomorrow.